So let's welcome our keynote speaker, Prasad Kaipa, who is a CEO of Kaipagroup and executive coach. So he's going to be covering a topic on smart to wise, acting and leading with wisdom. So let's all welcome Prasad Kaipa.
Thank you very much. Let me start with a question asking, how many of you look at yourself as smart? Can you raise your hand?
We are all smart.
Okay. Now I'm curious because first of all, why would some of the hands not go up? That's more important than how many hands have gone up. Why is that other hands are not going up? It's an interesting.
Because we think we are wise.
You think you are wise. And of course, that also means you think wise is opposite to smart. It's interesting. So now now that you preempted that question, let me ask, how many of you think that you are wise? There are a couple.
I'll keep that at
few. So of course, the question is, if you are neither smart nor wise, what category do you belong to? Is a question probably which we don't have to really elaborate. I would begin to say that in working with many of the people, over 25 years, I have been working on executive development, focusing on, from the time I quit Apple Computer in 89-90 time period. Since then, I have worked with about 120 C-suite executives around the world in one-on-one context. What I found is that many of us and many of them seems to have capabilities both in the domain of smartness as well as the wisdom. It is just a question of which one do they use more often, what is their comfort zone, where is it that they are much more interested in building their own thought leadership, building their own strength, building their own niche. That seems to become what defines them at some level. Like for example, some people, if they have succeeded doing certain kinds of jobs, they keep going for the same kind of jobs. And if some people have ventured outside their comfort zone and attempted to do something very different, became successful, like for example, when we are having conversations a little while earlier, some people like to be co-founders and they are the idea generators, they like to be CEOs and they like to start companies. Whereas other people who want to be in an entrepreneurial company, they might not be interested in becoming the CEOs, but they like to be the domain experts, they like to be the CTOs, they like to really bring their expertise and work with somebody else who is more business minded to be able to do. So that means even within the smartness, people look at it as who are domain experts who have deep knowledge in one particular domain, and the others are people who look at, they have the breadth of capabilities to connect various dots and connect various expertises in such a way they could build a business around it. So these are two different kinds of smartness that again we found out. Then the question of wisdom, when it came in, I found out it is not about staying in one kind of a box or the other, but the willingness to have flexibility to move. We will talk a lot more about. So I had chance to interview and write the stories of variety of people. We will talk a lot more about who they are and what it is about. And this is not meant to be for you to read, it is just put in there. These are all various kinds of endorsements we got, whether it was Beth Comstock or John Mackay of Whole Foods, Alan Mulally of Ford, or Klaus Schwab of World Economic Forum, or Jeff Smith of Lunar. There are large number of people who have actually looked at that aspect of it. So if you were to look at the smart person and wise person, then the question it comes down to is asking, who do you consider as wise or smart leader other than you? Now let us not focus on you for that moment. We agree and appreciate that you have both of those. But if I ask you, are there some people whom you identify as wise leaders or as smart leaders, and why? Can I take some comments from whom you consider as wise leaders? If so, why? Whom you consider as smart leaders? If so, why? Can I take some comments and questions from you? Who do you think are smart leaders that you know of?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Why would you say Steve Jobs is, of course you haven't said is he a smart leader or is he a wise leader?
Smart and wise leader.
He is a smart and wise leader. Why would you say that?
He has the dare, will and courage to stand up to the existing bunch of customers and say that this is what you want.
Okay, so he has the will and the courage to stand up to the established patterns of behavior expected from a computer company, and he protested and he went outside the thinking. So that allows you to think he is, that characteristic makes him smart or wise. See, by the way, do you see why I asking? I am asking, and by the way, this is not about testing your capability, but it is about developing a capability in you. First, to recognize your own smartness. Number two, recognize smartness and wisdom in other people, so that when you are making the kind of choices you are making, whether it is starting an entrepreneurial company, whether it is looking at the next set of career moves, or whether it is about looking at how do you deal with the kind of stresses and strains that you deal with, any of them, it all comes down to the question of what kind of differentiation I can make within myself. Number two, how can I recognize people who are smart or who are wise, with whom I can partner, from whom I can learn, and where I can grow. So first we need to have differentiation, right? So that's why I'm trying to ask. So I'm trying to figure out, if we already have certain amount of wisdom and smartness, that means we have an unconscious competence. From that unconscious competence, how do you make that explicit and conscious competence, so that once it is conscious, you can use it, you can teach it, you can write about it, you can develop other people. If you are only unconsciously competent in certain areas, your success becomes unpredictable, because sometimes you can produce the results, many other times you can't produce the results. Most of the times you can't scale up the operations because you do not know what exactly you have got that you can translate it, or you can transfer it, or you can teach it. So for that reason, we need to first know what makes somebody smart, what makes somebody wise. So we are trying to say, because we already have mental models and we have examples in our mind, let us take examples, let us understand why we call those examples to be the smart or wise, and from there we derive what are our mental models. That's what I'm trying to do. So please.
Yeah, I do have a mentor.
You do have a mentor?
I can't take his name because I don't know whether
Okay.
or not.
Okay.
But basically, he's a serial entrepreneur who sold the company for $100 million.
Okay.
Who exited it, and he saw a vision where people were not even looking at it. He was hell-bent on it, and when the compliance came, regulation came, the product was already there, and the solutions were all working, and so he exited successfully. So I find him to be more smart and also wise, because he sold the company, and now he's a senior entrepreneur, starting many more, he's an incubator. He started an incubator on it.
So, according to what you say, if a person can start a company, grow it and sell it, that makes him smart. And if he knows when to sell it, it is wise. Right? Okay. So, no, but by the way, I'm not laughing at, because this is, chances are majority of us in some way or another, we believe it. Now let me ask, after that, did he have any other startup that also grew to much higher level?
Right now he's working on that.
Right now he is working on it. Okay, so that is one thing. Like, let me take another example, as you said. Because we are all Indians, we might be familiar with a gentleman called Desh Deshpande. Desh Deshpande is a gentleman who started several companies. So Sycamore Networks, and there were other companies, 123 Systems and Akshaya Patra, some of it you might have heard. Many of them he started and then he exited with multi-billion dollar exits. Some of them sold, some of them went public, some of them 400 million. He has done like 3-4 startups. Then he went into non-profit. He created this Akshaya Patra, which gives large amount of opportunity for kids who do not have proper food to be fed in school while they are in school. And they are like, for example, feeding something like 500,000 kids a day or something like that at this moment. And he has been able to not only mentor companies but also social venture companies. And now he is working in Merrimack Island in Canada, in Hubli region of Karnataka, where he is developing entrepreneurs to become much more successful. So in that context, if I were to take the same category, he was able to build companies, exit successfully, learn from it and build other set of companies and know how to do that. And then once he came to a certain limit of doing something for the money, he began to help other people to become successful, coaching and teaching them. And then he realized it is not all about money. We need to actually build that in the society for not just for money but social ventures. He has been doing it. Recently he has been selected as the co-chair of the National Commission on Innovation and Entrepreneurship for President Obama. Right now that is what he is doing. So what you are saying is in the right direction. But I want you to begin to look at how far do you think about where the smartness ends, where the wisdom begins. Some of it also you might want to extend your thinking. If you only go with one success and one exit, it could be just before the dot-com bust. In 1990s, anybody could have started company and sold it for 100 million. The question is, after that, how well they were able to replicate the success they had before 2000. Could they replicate it afterwards? Could they get the same valuation? Could they succeed in it? Might help them to say they have taken something from learning and took it to the next level. You had a hand up.
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
So I view smartness as tactical.
Yeah.
And wisdom as something that is strategic. And the next level in the ladder would be a genius.
Okay. What I would say is, obviously, because we are all, NIT or other organizations like that. So from that perspective, we started in a technical field. Majority of us. Some of us are not, but we started in technical field. From there, when we went into a next level, for example, like if I take a software industry, one may start out as a software engineer, you may call them a coder at a lower level. Then you may help them to think like they are a designer. Then they may get to a place where they are a team leader. Then they may actually get to a part where they are actually becoming more like an architect. And if they have even gone in the technical field much higher, they may become a CTO. Would you agree? This is what I call a technical track. So you could be in the zone of smartness. Your career growth can be in the area of your expertise, in the area of technical domain. Some of you, for example, might have said, this is great, I got to be a designer, but I want to be an account manager, or I want to be a customer relations manager, or I want to actually go into product marketing. So you have gone from the domain of technical expertise into how to apply the technical expertise to do something which you have not necessarily learned while you went through the college. And some of you might have gone to MBA, some of you might have gotten advanced degrees, some of you might have gotten executive education certifications from different places, or some of you just learned through experience. What people say is, if you think about an ideal entrepreneur and an ideal employee of these days has a T shape. T means the breadth, and then the I part of the T is about the depth. The depth of technical expertise, but with a breadth of knowledge to connect the dots. That's what makes people very successful. So in some respects, what you call a smart capability could extend from technical depth into managerial breadth. That's also another way of looking at it. In my book, I divide them as functional smart and a business smart. Business smart people have this crossbar over the T, or the functional smart have got a certain depth within that. That is one way. We are trying to divide it for the sake of business. I just try to put it there. Yeah, please. I'll take your question.
Is it possible for a person to be wise and not smart?
Okay. And 3 days ago, yeah, go ahead. You want to elaborate on it?
Because we are trying to say that a person who is wise probably is ahead in the game than somebody who is just smart. Is it possible for somebody to be wise and not smart?
What I would say is, while it is possible for people who are wise not to be smart, I would put it like that means they are not really interested in using their wisdom for their self-interest. So, let me give an example. Steve Jobs, as you said, is a smart person. Another person who is of the same age, who also was a competitor and a friend at several times, is Bill Gates. Bill Gates is also a very smart person. He went to Harvard, and before even he completed his undergrad, he started the company Microsoft, and he took it to much higher level. He became the #1 software company. It became the most dominant software company. And in that process, when he was extremely smart, he knew how to define what he needed, how he needed. In that process, some people say he also became arrogant. The reason why people say that he was arrogant was when the Department of Justice came to investigate the anti-competitive practices that the Microsoft was using, he, instead of going to the court and testifying, he said, I don't have time for this, it is all game. And he actually had David Boies and the Department of Justice attorneys to come and interview them. And in that process of looking at it, he actually got, really annoyed at the kind of questions. He came across as if he is above everybody else. And nobody expected David Boies to play those tapes in the courtroom. When he did, the public perception about Microsoft, about Bill Gates changed so drastically. Within a few months, Department of Justice got the agreement from the government saying that Microsoft will be broken up between the operating systems and the software. Of course, they counter-sued, they went to the next level, and they came to an agreement that they will not break it up, but there will be some kind of a Chinese wall in between. But during that process, Bill Gates realized his smartness, his super focus on killing the competition kind of smartness actually was not helping Microsoft to get the proper public perception. He stepped down, people say, because he wanted somebody else to project as the head of the Microsoft. But in that process, his wife Melinda seems to have gotten him interested in the what you might call a social entrepreneurship causes, health, education, third world economy, some of this. So they started the foundation, Gates Foundation. He got involved with the same intensity and the focus that he had for Microsoft, and in that process he has already given away approximately $26 billion of his money, and another $30 billion he has committed. He actually not only he committed saying only 10% of the money I earned, I'll keep it for my family, rest of it I'll give away, but he got partnerships with Warren Buffett and created something called a giving foundation, and he raised $745 billion from other billionaires to give away their money while they are still alive for the betterment of the world. In that respect, Bill Gates went from smart to being wise. Now, the question which you had raised is, if they are wise, are they still smart? The key is, once you have paid attention to the wisdom, once you are operating within that, then the question of choice it comes. When push comes to shove, could, of course people complain Microsoft stock has not grown in past 13 years. So people say that the gentleman actually has not taken the company anywhere, and they keep waiting for him to be fired because he will let go of everybody else around him so that his position is secure if we trust the newspaper reports. So in some respects people say, can Bill Gates come back to be a CEO again of Microsoft, removing his childhood friend and Harvard friend? If he does that, would that be a smart move? If not, would it be a wise move? These are some questions which we'll have to look at. And I would say that smartness and wisdom go hand in hand. Each one of us have different ratios of it. There is no such thing like wise people, or there is no such thing like smart people. Each of us have got certain capability. What are we over dependent of? Where are we paying total attention is what makes somebody smart or somebody wise. Right now, Bill Gates is focusing on his wisdom to make the world a better place. So you call them, he is repurposing his smartness for the good of the world. That North Star, that shared purpose is what makes him a wise person. That is allowing him to be context sensitive. That is allowing him to operate with an enlightened self-interest, not just what is in it for me kind of interest. So when you combine the noble purpose, a purpose for something more than what is in it for me. Number two, being context sensitive to know what to do when, without really looking at how have I done it before and what brought me to this position, and continuing to over-reliantly dependent on your success formula to be able to use what is needed and necessary in the context. Second is the context sensitivity. That is also something which wise leaders have got. Third is not about self-interest alone, but actually having an enlightened self-interest. Like for example, if you talk about social network, if you want to further your career, I know several of you are interested in finding ways in which you can move your career one notch up. For that, what people say, don't just come to events, exchange cards, say hi, and go home and send a LinkedIn saying, now I want to connect with you, and then say, in your connections, you have this guy. Can you connect me to that guy? And then you wonder why they don't do that. The reason for that is, if you are looking at networking as a shortcut to career growth, chances are you won't get what you want. Why is that? If you want to have really a good way to build your career and increase your influence, then first of all, find out what the other person is looking for. Where is it that you can help them? Go help them out without expecting anything else. Like for example, when I'm trying to get my book sold, one of the things which I do is, most of my tweeting is not necessarily about my book. It's actually about some other article I have seen, somebody else who has written something very interesting, some ideas which are very good, and I'm promoting like half a dozen people's books on my own social network. I tweet, or I kind of follow people, or I put it on my Facebook. When I do all of it, then I establish a relationship where I am helping somebody without expecting in return. And when I truly need some help, if I ask, my credibility factor is so high, my trust factor is high, they will be willing to do what I want. As a matter of fact, there is a book on influence. There is a wonderful article in Harvard Business Review a few years ago that came, how to have highest influence. One of the quickest thing they say is reciprocity. What have you done for me before you ask me to do a favor for you? So this is one of the biggest important lessons you can take away, whether you become a wise leader or not. When you can help other people as much as you can, then your ability to get what you want becomes significantly higher. Right? So let me take it to a little bit further to see what we are talking about. As I said to you, the Bill Gates is smart and wise, but he transitioned from being smart to wise. Now, some of you raised, Steve Jobs. You gave an explanation saying he is smart. Are there things which you can say he is smart or he is wise? Where is he at this moment? What would you say?
Yeah. He was smart in predicting the future of computers in
Okay.
handheld devices.
Okay.
And he was also wise in bringing up the team to that level using his effect. What do they call?
Steve Jobs effect.
Yeah. Steve
Okay.
Jobs effect.
Okay.
Making people believe that you are doing this is the right thing to do.
Okay. Yeah. So he had a certain impact that basically people could not say no to him. At some level it felt like browbeating. At some level you can believe it, but at the same time you don't have the capability to say no to him. There are examples which are talked about where there was a gentleman who was talking about booting up the computer from scratch to complete functionality. It seems the Finder, in Apple they called it, it seems the Finder was booting up in about 1 minute 10 seconds from 0 to, when you press the start button to applications being available to you. Steve Jobs felt it was too long. So he went and told, how can we reduce this time? He said, I have done all optimizations, it is not possible. He said, if there were to be some young children dying, and if you can save 20 seconds of the boot up time, you can save so many lives. Would you do something about it, and could you do something in that context? He said, maybe. He said, then he sat down and calculated, if we have sold 1.2 million computers, each of them, if you can save 20 seconds, it will be 1.2 times 20 seconds, and so many babies could be saved and so much of stuff. This fellow felt like, oh my God, I'm browbeaten. But he said, let me put my assumptions aside about what I think is possible or not possible. He went ahead and experimented. He actually shaved off 30 to 40 seconds, which he didn't even think it was possible to do it. So in some respects, whenever people stood up to Steve Jobs, whenever people had the self-image and the courage to live up to the challenges that Steve Jobs has presented, many of them succeeded beyond their own personal imagination. So they were able to bring out magic in them that they didn't know that they had. Of course, the shadow side of that is majority of the people got so stressed, majority of the people left organization without ever becoming successful, as some of the people are also there. So anything which he did had remarkable positive, as well as there was an incredible shadow effect on that. But at the same time, some of the decisions he made, like for example Apple stores. The story goes that when Apple wanted to start a brick and mortar stores, like what you see as Apple stores, it seems they did, one of the major consulting companies, they paid a couple of $1 million to do study on brick and mortar stores in the age of .com bust. Many of them came back and said, look at Macy's, look at Kmart, look at Sears, look at JCPenney. Nobody is making money. Now is the time to stay like Amazon focus on completely on the clicks rather than on the bricks. He heard all of it, he looked at all the mistakes the brick and mortar people are doing, and then he went ahead and said, I'm going to create a company that doesn't have the same problems these people have got. How can you do that? He said, I am not focused on brick and mortar stores selling anything, I'm focused on the customer experience. Selling happens automatically. He said, I want to create an opportunity for customers to come and play with our technology without any pressure or without anybody else trying to sell. We will support them and we will show them how great the Macintosh technology is, and the selling will happen itself. Right now, they make, I think, something like 370 stores they have. They make $19 billion off of the stores, and the per square foot revenue of Apple stores is approximately $6,000. The next nearest per square foot income is by a jewelry stores, one of very famous jewelry stores on 5th Avenue, which makes about $3,000. Most of the other stores are less than $1,700 per square foot. Isn't that interesting that by focusing on something nobody else is focusing on? He said, if I can focus on a noble purpose of providing a superior customer experience, selling happens all by itself. By the way, of course you can say, oh, that's a great one, how can you prove it? Well, last year from Dixon's Corporation, Tim Cook had hired a gentleman to replace Ron, who went to JCPenney as the CEO. When he came in, Dixon gentleman, not known for customer experience, not understanding the purpose of it, he wanted to increase the efficiency and revenue of each store. So he played around with the leave policies and genius bar and the number of employees they should have and the kind of things what they can do so that they can increase the revenues per store even more. Within 6 weeks, it actually, what you call, went down so much that they decided, first of all, we will stop this efficiency experiment. Number 2, we will fire the Dixon CEO. And number 3, go back to the focus on customer experience. So there are some things which Steve Jobs has done. Those are wise, counterintuitive. He had a different kind of a different decision logic than what we call analytics or database decisions. He used intuition coupled with analysis to make his decisions. So sometimes wisdom does not come just by dealing with the big data. Wisdom also comes which one is not susceptible to big data. Big data will give you based on the past. Intuition will give you where you could go, where big data is not available at this moment to be able to tell. So wise leaders sometimes use intuition and emotion in addition to logic and data. You need to know when is it time for doing one and when is it time for doing another. So in some respects, you don't have to be either Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. You can be anywhere in your organization and you can actually look at how can I be a wise leader. For anything to begin with, you need to be able to look at it and say, where am I at this moment so that I can actually use this as a baseline and I can develop myself. So if you go to fromsmarttowise.com, there is a free 18-question assessment. We have checked it out based on 100 people who have filled it out in the beginning. It took about 4.5 minutes to fill out the question. But we also found out people have a tendency to think of themselves to be more wise than they are. So what I recommend is think about past 3-month behaviors. If you ask people who are near and dear to you, who know you very well, how would they answer that question? If you can keep that check in mind when you fill this out, once you fill out the 18 questions, it will send you by email your own assessment based on self-assessment, and it will tell you in like a rating, where are you wise, where are you not wise, what are the 6 capabilities. I will talk a lot more about it, but you can go check that out and fill it out. As I said, that's a free assessment that you can do that. By the way, I had asked Sridhar to send it out for you to do the assessment before you come. How many of you have done it? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay. If there are 1 or 2, I would have been surprised. Then I would have said, there is some true commitment to actually building your next step and becoming a wise leader right away. But, we are too young for wise leadership right now, right? So let us focus on smartness. Second thing, which I also found, because I have interviewed like about 40 CEOs of different people. I got people from India, from United States, from everywhere else. I focused on people who are extremely successful. When I was in Apple, I was a fellow in Apple University looking at what are the success recipes of extraordinarily successful people. So I interviewed at that time 17 Nobel laureates. I had interviewed successful CEOs. I had interviewed people like Dalai Lama, Shankaracharyas, or mullahs, Zen masters. I've spent time in variety of what you call as scientist laboratories to look at various ways of doing it. That is what led me to leave Apple at that time, because I began to look at the intelligence of people is divided into 2 things. One is intelligence used for self-interest. Intelligence used for building something that is much more sustainable. I called one as the learning that leads to data and information. Second, learning that leads to wisdom. So one gives you the smartness, another gives you the wise leadership, and that's what I have been on the journey since 1990. So I spent a large amount of time, and recently for the book, again I interviewed these people and I validated based on their stories and based on their life histories, how did they pan out. That is what resulted in this particular kind of books. So, by the way, and when you go there, you can download a chapter, free chapter, you can download the preface. First chapter will give you the entire summary of the book. If you don't want to buy the book, you don't have to buy it. You can just download the free chapter and you can get the whole gist of the book within that. Of course, people tell me the same thing, right? When I go to coach CEOs, they tell me, give me an assessment and tell me what I need to improve on. I do that and I give them, these are all some things which you need to focus on if you want to get from where you are to the next level. And then I say, now at this time you can go get coached by somebody else, or you know already what you need to develop. If you have the self-discipline and if you have the capability, go learn it yourself. You don't need to have me, you don't need to hire me. Because, like sometimes it is important to give people a choice of, if you know what you need to do, will you be able to do it? It's like a weight loss. Everybody knows how to lose weight. There are only 2 things. One, reduce your food consumption. If you can completely cut it out, at least reduce the portion size, right? And the frequency. Second, do some exercise so that you can actually use that food to get down, let down some calories. If you can get rid of about 300 calories through exercise, let us say half an hour walking, a brisk walking so that your heart is high, rate is high, and then cut out couple of those desserts or couple of those fat food, some of it, so that you can cut another 200 or 300 calories, 600 calories if you can reduce per day. Within a week, it becomes something like 3,500 to 4,200 calories, which means 1 pound. So that's all it takes. If you can reduce the portion size, increase the exercise a little bit, per week you can lose 1 pound per week and you can consistently do it. I can tell you, I have done that. When I got diagnosed a couple of years ago with a diabetic situation, they said I need to lose some weight. So within about 2.5 months, whatever I told you, I applied and I lost about 20 pounds. So this is very easy. But how come most people don't do it? That is because what you know goes in your head, which is where the smartness comes out. But when it comes to behavior, our subconscious, unconscious set of habits, behaviors, conditioning and the autopilot state prevents us from applying what we already know. That is where true development of the self actually happens. So in that respect, that if you want to grow your career, you don't need a lot of recipes and tips and techniques from other people. You need to have certain ability to follow what you have picked up. Like from tonight, you might pick up only 3 tips, 1 or 2 from the other people, 1 insight from my talk, let us say, just 1. If you can take those 3 and apply it for next 3 months, you can turn your life around. But the reason why we don't do that is, we have a lot of insights, but more intelligent we are, smarter we are, we want something that are visions, insights and ideas, but we think better we understand the ideas, more we explain it to other people, more we convince it to other people, somehow we will actually become experts in applying those ideas. But it never really happens. It's like having a book under the pillow and expecting to do very well in the next day in the exam. It never worked when you were in the NIT, and it doesn't work when you are doing the job as well. So the idea of trying to take it at one level will not work. Why is that? We keep moving from one end to the other end. If wisdom is the fulcrum, which is our birthright by the way, but one end is the functional smartness, another end is the business smartness. Business smartness is all about risk taking, entrepreneurial qualities, it is about connecting the dots, it is about strategy and vision. On the other hand, functional smartness is about staying in your comfort zone, being cautious and careful and secure to make sure whatever you have taken on is executed extraordinarily well. And it is also about being the best person you can within the domain of expertise that you have. So, on one side, you don't take any risks. On another side, you take too many risks. First you make a commitment to the customer, then you come back and figure out whom do I need to get this delivery done. That is on the business smartness. On the other hand, if you are like unwilling to say yes until you figured out all the recipe and algorithm to the last level, then you are in the functional smart. Okay, I hope this will give you some indication to think about where you are on the spectrum. But of course, if you want to get more details, you can go into and do the free assessment. But the wise leadership is not about being completely like a wisdom with a sage who sits on the top of the mountain, but to bring the practical nature of the wisdom to see when do you let go of your position. Especially, I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs change their position when they realize the opportunity is big. They need to get it done. They are willing to listen to somebody else and willing to do things other than their own mental model. But if there is no high aspiration, if there is no desperation, we all are very comfortable preaching to everybody else what our mental models are. How good they are, we don't have evidence. But how convinced we are, we can speak it louder, we can say it more, and we try to convince everybody else, including ourselves. That is when the smart people fall into the trap of self-deception. You have to know, where are you deceiving yourself? Where are you thinking suddenly you will learn what you have not been able to learn without anybody else's help, without a coach or without a team or without somebody giving you some kind of a sense saying emperor has no clothes. And if you are unwilling to listen to that, your chance of growing in your career, in your entrepreneurial company becomes almost limited. So the wise leadership is not about staying stuck on either end of the pendulum, but being able to move freely from one perspective to another perspective. These are all variety of people whom we have interviewed. That's why I asked you guys to come a little bit forward, but it doesn't matter. These guys don't really know anything more than what you do already anyway. So in that respect, you don't have to worry about reading the book and listening to them and, what do they know, right? They are not Indian necessarily, or if they are not Hindus, or they are not Sikh, or they don't have your experience, they are not in cloud, or they are not in that. We have 100 reasons why we don't need to learn from other people. So just pick one of them and stay with it. So the first step, because that staying with your perspective is the biggest problem many smart people have got. There are 6 principles I have come up with for the wise leadership. The first one is you have to shift your perspective. Shifting the perspective is as simple as I am standing in front of you and talking to you, and you are sitting in your chair and listening. Imagine if you were to come and give this talk to your colleagues, your team members, your family members when you go out. What would you tell about wisdom? What would you tell about your smartness? What would you tell about where are you stuck and where are they stuck? Because if you try to go tell them all the areas where they are wrong, first thing they will do, if that is your spouse you are talking to, you will be sleeping on the couch, if not in the guest room. That is for sure. Why? Because in the family, if you are always finding fault with what is it that they have done wrong, I'm sure nobody in this room does that, but I'm just saying, somehow we seem to have that Indian smartness means criticizing the spouse in everything that they have done. We are only trying to teach them, you see, we are trying to get them better, but they don't understand our good intentions. But our road to hell is being paved with all our good intentions. One day they are going to give it to you really bad. Only thing is, I hope by that day you are prepared. Same thing, right? If you are smart, what is that many American managers say? When I have smart Indians, if I have 2 Indians, I don't need a third enemy. They will sit in the boardroom or they will sit in things, they will keep on getting into what they politely and nicely call it as a pissing contest. Who does it better? Who is actually more smart? They keep on sniping at each other. They want to get the last word. So these are some ways in which smart people use their smartness. I'm sure, you guys are all very wise. We already established that. So I'm sure none of you do that, so you don't have to worry about shifting the perspective. But if you do know somebody in your life who do, first step is to look at it from other person's perspective. Think about how does it feel when somebody gives it to you, what you give, what you dish out so generously, day in and day out. To give you an example, in CCL, Center for Creative Leadership, I was a fellow for a year. We do programs called a Leadership at the Peak. Only about 8 to 12 people are invited. It is like $12,500 for a 5-day program. People who come are like $2 billion or more company CEOs. COOs are not allowed. And it's like a 4-star generals or people who are at a very, very high level. They go through a lot of tests, assessments before they come in. When they come in, one of the biggest thing we tell them is, when you give performance feedback, even at a workplace, you need to give 4 positive feedbacks before you can give 1 negative or a developmental feedback. If you want, at your level, the next level, you are talking to presidents of companies who manage like a $250 million to $500 million companies. Even at that level, you need to give 4 positive strokes for 1 negative stroke. Of course, many Indians say, I think if we give 1 positive stroke, I should be able to tell them 4 negative things they need to improve on. That is more efficient approach, but efficiency doesn't work with human development most of the time. We have 2 ears and 2 eyes and 2 nostrils, only 1 mouth. But the ratio, somehow we mistake it a little bit differently, as somebody said earlier. But, and then they asked me a question. I tried this 4:1 ratio with my spouse and kids. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work with the spouse and kids? That is because they don't have a working financial relationship with you. Whether you are a female or a male, the spouse doesn't work for you. Kids don't work for you. What it means is you have to go into 8-to-1 or 12-to-1 ratio of positive strokes if you want it to be something that is workable at home. Why am I telling that? For an Indian to build their career, if you don't take away anything else, if you can take away for your peers, for your subordinates, for your managers, instead of finding how many things they are wrong, how many things they are not doing right, if you can catch how many things they are actually getting done and how you can help them and figure out one conversation that can be developmental, but you position it as a way that they can agree on, improve upon. Like, we have this statement, right? Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, sapna bruyat, satyam apriyam. Tell the truth, but tell the truth when other people consider it as something they want to receive it, and when they ask for it, tell the truth. But don't use the truth as a baseball bat to hit people on the head. Oh, I'm only truthful. I don't play politics at my workplace. I tell the truth whenever it is. Only thing is, you are leaving dead bodies around you in the name of you telling the truth. Have you paid attention to that? So in the name of smartness, sometimes we lose wisdom. When you shift the perspective that by you giving all the criticism, you have not changed the mind or perspective of one single person, because whether it is your children, whether it is your subordinate, they keep on doing the same things they did before. However many times you criticize. Only thing is, they will not do it in front of you, they will do it behind you. Previously you could see it, now you can't even see it. So, first figure out how you do that. So when you are in the blue zone, which means a functional smart, several times you need to focus on what is it that you take on and you stick with it. You have to change that perspective, because if you take something and stick with it till you receive short-term concrete perspective, that will not be helpful to you. On the other hand, if you are in the red zone, that means you are a business smart person. You keep on looking at how can I shine? How can I differentiate myself from my colleagues? How can I build a brand of my own? How can I look, little bit different? All of them may be from NIT, but I may be from Warangal, some may be from Trichy. Warangal guys are better than Trichy people. Everybody knows that, right? Think about it. If that is the mindset with which you walk around, that I am from Warangal, so I expect royal treatment from everybody else, first of all, you will be disappointed. Second, actually, you are going to have a lot of negative impact. So, shifting the perspective is about looking at how do you connect and integrate and grow other people. Here in the book, I talked about Alan Mulally, who used to be the 777 general manager. He was the CEO of Boeing aircraft before he became a Ford CEO. And Ford has been consistently profitable since he has been the CEO of that company. Same thing, he came in, he looked at it and said, wow, these guys have Jaguar, these guys have Land Rover, these guys have Mercury, they have Lincoln, they have Ford. He comes very early to work, sometimes at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then he goes, he says, there are so many brands of cars that are happening. He said, how will a Ford manager manage these multiple brands? Okay, 9 to 11, I will manage Ford. And 11 to 1, I will manage Mercury. 1 to 3, I will manage Lincoln. Then 3 to 5, I will manage Jaguar and Land Rover. He said, this doesn't work. We need to commit to some things which we are focused on. So what did he do? He sold off Jaguar and Land Rover to Tata Group. He closed Mercury. He stayed with Lincoln and Ford. He said, one high end, one low end, that's all I'm going to focus on. Similarly, he made several decisions where, like for example, they were in real trouble. He took $23 billion loan when in 2008 he could have got this TARP money, like which many other companies took. Instead, he took that blue oval, the Ford oval, the brand logo, they put it for some kind of a pawning kind of a way, and they got $23 billion loan. He paid it off because he said, we need to control our destiny. We cannot let government control our destiny. These are counterintuitive. These are shifting perspective. What I want you to think about is, wherever you are, in your job, in your career, where is it that you are stuck to one perspective, even though it is not working, you keep on pretending like somehow, someday, other people will change. You don't have to change. That is where you may need to think about. So if nothing else, if you can take one action on what is it that I need to change. Similarly, from India, the example is Dr. Venkataswamy, Dr. Venkataswamy from Arvind Eye Hospital. He was a gentleman who grew up with rheumatoid arthritis, where his fingers were in like a curved, and he was in constant pain, but he became an eye surgeon. And when he retired at the age of 58, he decided, I'm too young to retire, I want to really make a difference. And his noble purpose became, I want to eliminate needless blindness. He didn't say needless blindness in Tamil Nadu. He didn't say needless blindness in India. He didn't say needless blindness from people who have cataract. He just said, I want to eliminate needless blindness. He went and convinced his sister Nachiyar. He convinced his other brothers. He converted his 4-bedroom house into a 11-bed hospital in 1970s. Right now, he passed away. I think he passed away about 2006 or 2007. Arvind Eye Hospital is the largest eye care in the world. People from Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Stanford, they go to study the system in Arvind Eye Hospital. And they, by the way, just to give you an example, they also created something called Arvind Labs. And there, they licensed the cataract lenses from United States. Those lenses are sold in United States for $150 a pair. Same lenses, paying the licensing fee for the American manufacturer, they manufacture them and sell them for $5. That is the level of efficiency they got. You know, another shifting perspective they got, you know where they got their business model for their eye hospital? They looked at McDonald's. They said, if McDonald's can provide satisfying, good quality food at the lowest prices everywhere in the world, why can't we provide eye care in the same way? Everybody laughed at them in the beginning, but not when he achieved the kind of efficiencies. Now there is something called Narayana Murthy. Devi Shetty had also started. They are doing heart surgeries in the same way these guys are doing eye surgery. If you have not seen, there is an excellent book called Infinite Vision. Actually, one of the Bay Area authors, her name is Pavitra Krishnan Mehta, and she wrote the book. If you want sometime, I'll introduce to you guys. It's a fantastic book, Infinite Vision. Get the copy of it, because that will truly tell you how to change yourself, how to achieve your vision, and how to bring about your purpose to really fulfill your life. Through shifting your own perspective, you can shift the perspective of the world. If you want to be a truly successful entrepreneur, those are some things which you need to do. That's the first capability. Tell me whenever you need me to start, so I can keep track of something.
Yeah, you can wrap it up in 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, good. Then I'll quickly go to the other one. The second capability is what I call action orientation. You may have a great perspective, you may have a wonderful mindset. If you do not bring it into action, then you have what is called a credibility gap, because you don't walk your talk. You know? So the idea of a wise leader is they not only develop a shift in perspective, they try to take authentic action that is appropriate to the context. That is what differentiates. Whether it is PepsiCo, for example, PepsiCo CEO Indra Nooyi figured out that the large drinks, do you want Coke with that? Do you want Pepsi with that? Do you want large fries with that? That is becoming something, not very acceptable. Like Mayor Bloomberg in New York, he has actually said no supersized drinks, no supersized foods, because obesity has become a problem. So she began to realize selling the sugar drinks is not going to work. She started saying, I don't want to just sell fun for you foods like chips and so what you call the cola drinks and pizza and all of them. I want to also sell good for you foods. I want 10% of PepsiCo revenues to come from what are good for you, like Quaker Oats, oatmeal, some of the good stuff. She is also looking at Ayurvedic stuff, Indian soups, other kinds of things that can also use the PepsiCo channel to do that. So she is not just having a vision or a purpose, she is able to do that. Similarly, Ramon in Costa Rica is trying to do similar things. Similarly, Firoj, who used to be the head of SAP India, SAP Labs in India, now he is the head of the SAP Labs Asia. He began to look at it and say, how do I take action that is consistent but at the same time authentic to who I am and what I need to do. The third principle is not just about having some of these, but you have to have a role clarity. That means you may have right perspective, you may be taking right actions, but if you go around with ego, look at me, I am the greatest, I do all this, I am a wise leader, nobody gives a damn. As a matter of fact, all your team members will get completely ticked off by your holier than thou attitude. That means having a good role clarity means recognizing you are like an actor. If you are like what you call Shah Rukh Khan, in one you may be the king, in another film you may be the beggar, but you do both of them with such a commitment, such a passion, such a depth of emotion that people are crying seeing, wow, what a great thing, but he is laughing all the way to the bank. That means if you want to be a successful manager, entrepreneur, you need to recognize passion is important, but obsession kills you. Passion is important, but make sure you can clearly see that this is a job that you are doing, it is not who you are. If you mistake who you are with what you do, then you could get into a lot of trouble. So you need to have that clarity so that you can know when to sell the company, when to close the shop and move on, when to let it go, when to go find another job, when you know your career has no future in that particular company. You need to be able to look at yourself without having that emotional entanglement. That is what is called role clarity. Then you can lead from the front, you can lead from behind or anywhere else. I bring examples of Narayana Murthy because he is the one who went ahead and said when he got the level 5 certificate from SCI CMM level 5 certification, he went ahead and taught all his competitors to really become good and get the same level 5 certification. He said why? Because the business for outsourcing is about $1 to $2 billion at this moment, but if we have half a dozen companies who are at the highest level of software quality, then this could grow into 10 or 50 billion, which is exactly what has happened. So the enlightened self-interest, having a role clarity to know when to do what, those are the things that will help. On the other hand, in Barclays, Bob Diamond, recently there was a lot of problem about Bob Diamond and Barclays Bank with some rates. He got into trouble with that. The fourth one, I already mentioned about the Apple Stores example and how Steve Jobs had the decision logic that was not just based on data but also intuitive but also based on a larger purpose. Similarly, Sam Palmisano, when we interviewed him, he was talking about values jam, or he talked about how they sold off in his leadership, under his leadership, they sold off the hard disks, they sold off the computers, like the PCs, they sold off to Lenovo, and they went into completely the services business. When we asked them what is happening, he said when the computers are going to become commodity, we decided it will not work. Before everybody else saw it, we saw the market drop And now you can imagine what now Dell is going through, and Hewlett Packard tried to get rid of some of their stuff, so it is not working. It is too late. These people knew, like Sam Palmisano, or if you take Steve Jobs, these are the guys who knew that the logic behind the decisions has to be with the discernment. We call it in India Vivek. Now the ability to discriminate and discern is something that wise leaders seem to differentiate quite nicely and become very successful. If you take the fortitude is the fifth capability, and fortitude, Wendy Kopp, Teach for America, she's tried desperately to do various stuff, but she stayed with the Teach for America plan. Now it is like $250 million plus plan to really get young people to get into teaching that they never were interested in, but she created it as a movement where people are interested in going and Teach for America. It is not easy to get jobs in Teach for America and to be able to go do that. Similarly, if you try to look at Mark Hurd on the other hand, there are interesting contrasts that you can bring regarding the fortitude that he was able to demonstrate. And there is another example from India I brought, Kiran Majumdar Shah, who is the founder of Biocon. When she had been so committed to diabetic therapy, she had been working on something like a oral insulin. When the initial results for one of the formulations didn't work out, she said, you know what, that's fine. I have invested 7 years into this, but if this doesn't work, we need to let go. Let go of the formulation, but not let go of the commitment to the larger purpose of finding a therapy for diabetes. So, when you have a larger purpose, when to hold on, when to let go, when to move on with something that doesn't work, whether it's a startup, whether it's a job, whether it's a situation, life situation, you can make those decisions much more importantly and much more meaningfully. And finally, the last capability I would say is about the motivation. Here, I couldn't find too many Western examples. I found Ratan Tata creating the Tata Nano. When he was going in Bangalore, when it was raining, when he saw a family with 2 kids, wife and husband, going in and skidding in rain and falling down, and then he recognized, these people are paying probably for the motorcycle and the scooter, maybe somewhere between 50 to 1 lakh rupees. If I can make a car that will give them protection from the nature, rain and sun, and all the 4 of them can go safely from one place to another, that would be great. Despite what happened in Singur, they had to move the entire factory from West Bengal to Sanand in Gujarat. He still did not increase the price. They came up with a 1 lakh car. Of course, the marketing didn't go very well, because when you call something a poor man's car, even poor men don't want to buy it. But that marketing fast they have done it. But otherwise, they created something. Same thing with O.P. Bhatt. O.P. Bhatt was the chairman of State Bank of India. When he came in, he said, I grew up as a career banker here. State Bank of India has a lot of smart people, but we have also become government bureaucrats. We don't care about customers, we don't care about service. So State Bank of India, even though it's a 200-year-old bank, largest government bank dealing with 25% of Indian government, they kept going down in market share and profitability. He went ahead and focused on motivating people at all levels with nothing except his own sheer enthusiasm. He was able to turn it around in the 5 years. It went down from 14.5%, it grew up to 19%, and the culture of the organization completely changed. So, to summarize, there are 6 basic things. You need to create a field around you to develop other people. You can't do it all by yourself. So first, shift your perspective. Second, take action according to the new perspective. Third, when you are acting out of the new perspective, recognize this is just a role you are playing. Don't get caught up with the ego behind the role. Fourth, make decisions with clarity of what is behind your decisions, Why do you want to make the decisions? Again, the noble purpose, the why question is more important than what or how. Strategy and vision can change if the purpose and mission are properly understood. The decision logic is the front end of making decisions. Fortitude is the back end of making decisions. When to stay with a failing success, when to stay with a failing entrepreneurial venture or to a job, that is something it will become much clearer. And finally, you need to keep asking, what motivates me? What is the driver of my motivation? If you can use these 6, these can be like a project management framework for you to look at, and the assessment which I told you before will help you to see in which of these 6 characteristics are you operating with wisdom, which of these you are operating with somewhere else, and that with the examples and with the stories, and then there are lots of questions and tips in each chapter. Hopefully you will begin to develop something, and ultimately this is what you can do. Your personal development, if you stop at that, it will go away very quickly. You have to develop people around you, you have to develop wise teams, wise organizations and wise communities. That is when the wisdom that you are bringing becomes practical, that actually allows you to create sustainable entrepreneurial companies that become successful over time. Because these days, you can't just expect an exit within 12 to 18 months. You need to have the fortitude and wherewithal to stay with it till it becomes successful. And that success is going to come when you can look at these 6 principles as building on each other and use them to build the organization and community and team. With that, you will be able to create some kind of a momentum into repurposing your smartness into wisdom. So what differentiates smartness is your own self-interest and application of intelligence for your own benefit. What makes that wise is using that intelligence for a larger purpose in the right context with enlightened self-interest. If you can do that, then you will know when to go back for your own selfish purpose, when to go back for the larger interest. That is when you are balancing your smartness with wisdom, and that increases the chances of success significantly. In case you have not seen, I gave a TEDx talk on entrepreneurial success recently. It is I think on YouTube. If you go check my name, you will find it. I spent like 20 years researching how entrepreneurs become successful. Those principles correlate very well with the wise leadership principles. Hopefully, you can take some of these. It doesn't matter what level of the organization you are operating in, what kind of a startup you operate with. If you can apply these principles, it will help you to become much more successful. Because you are Indians, one more thing is, some of you might correlate these 6 principles with the 6 principles from Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter. They talk about Gnanam, Karma, Karta, Buddhi, Dhruti and Sukham. They correlated beautifully. So there is the empirical evidence for it based on the stories, but also there is a spiritual basis in ancient India. But that may not be relevant to most of the Westerners. But because you are Indians, it doesn't matter which religion you come from, there are certain ancient and appropriate wisdom. I hope you can take it away. So what I did is frame it in a way that becomes meaningful, that brings the scientific and empirical data, and if you apply it and try it out, maybe, hopefully you will find a lot of success. And Sridhar had asked me to bring a few books. I had brought a few books in the, if I don't have enough for everybody to buy, but if you want, let me know. You can pick up a copy for it. So, thank you very much. And if we have questions, I'll take it.
Thanks a lot, Prasad, for a very thoughtful and insightful speech and leading this discussion today.